Most leaders are stuck in a cycle. They overwork, burn out, and crash. And then guess what? Rinse and repeat. The pressure's on. We want to get stuff done, people to see, jobs to be handled, stuff to be explored, money to be made. We all know the pressures that we're under on a daily basis. And too often we treat exhaustion like it's a badge of honor, as if workaholism, right? Nobody wants to admit they're a workaholic, but like workaholism is my badge of honor. You don't know how many hours I put in at the office last week. You don't know how many hours I spent on the road traveling around for sales calls, right? So we treat it like a badge of honor, and we treat rest like it's a reward that we have to earn. We get to the end of the week, we finally get to crash, and somehow that's the reward that we earned. And most of us don't spend our weekends reinvesting. We spend our weekends trying to recover. But great leaders don't swing between burnout and busyness. Instead, we learn to operate from predictable rhythms that fuel sustainable productivity. Keyword being sustainable. That's why we teach the Productivity Pendulum, a tool to help you lead sustainably and perform consistently, especially under pressure. I'm Eric Pfeiffer, and in this episode, I'm joined by Don Neldon, and together we are unpacking how to lead in a way that's not just increasingly more productive, but saves us from short-circuiting in the process.
That's right. And we see this with leaders all the time. I'm working with a group right now where I'm like, folks, we need to be aware of this because I sense that you are inching towards burnout, and nobody is effective when they are burning out. But the problem is leaders think that they're being productive, oftentimes, handling all the to-dos, checking off the lists, and really they just are in a cycle of busyness. The pressures build, they never take a pause, and eventually they have that rev limiter pushed to the max for too long, and they burn out. So we see it all the time, Eric, but I'm curious, why do you think this cycle is so common, especially we see it with high performers?
Yeah, so let me offer a few reasons that I think we have both experienced with the many leaders we've worked with for this kind of cycle of behavior. And I think we're going to touch on high performers or anybody really in any area of life, in the workplace, or even we get into this cycle even in our personal lives.
Yeah.
So number one, you already said it. We mistake busyness for productivity. Busyness is frenzied activity or engagement in different things without clear direction, right? And we'll come back to that later. Here's another thing, and I would encourage our listeners to consider which of these resonate with them. Another one is that we get caught on the treadmill of approval. We think that by working longer hours and staying in the office later and, working through the weekends and working while we're on vacation, answering emails at our kids' sporting events, right, it is somehow going to earn us a greater sense of approval from our leaders. Number three, we misunderstand rest for laziness. We think that by slowing down, pausing, taking a break, taking a day off, not looking at our emails for a few hours, we mistake that as an expression of laziness. And again, that is rooted in the fear that either we're not doing enough or that people won't see us as doing enough. And the last one that we see very often is the fear of being left behind. And for all of our entrepreneurs, all those people who are embarking on a new project or a new job responsibility or new promotion or something new, there's this constant fear that drives us that, if I'm not working, somebody else is, and therefore I'm going to get left behind.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, let's just be honest. Let's call it out. Social media in so many ways is fueling the frenzy that is driven by a fear that we're not enough, that people won't think we're enough, or that we're going to be left behind. And so I just want to strongly encourage our listeners to consider the kind of things that we're entertaining in our minds as we're engaged in different social media platforms to make sure that we're not inadvertently, stuck on a diet of these folks who are pushing us into a lifestyle of burnout and breakdown.
Yeah, it's true. Social media is that high line. So nobody is sharing necessarily when they take a rest or when they're feeling burnt out or when they're struggling with imposter syndrome. They're only sharing that high line. And if that's what we're typically ingesting, we're going to have a skewed understanding of how we should be showing up every day.
That's right.
So let's get into this tool, the productivity pendulum. This is one of my favorites because it challenges so many conventional understandings about how, especially in American culture, we are supposed to show up for our job, for our life, for our family, all of the things.
Yes. So first of all, let me just ask our readers, our listeners, maybe they're reading the transcript. That's possible. Let me ask them for a favor. I don't like the title of this tool. I've not been able to find a better one. So as our listeners are listening to this episode and we're unpacking the tool, just leave in the comments, DM us through our social media platform, and let us know if you have a better title for this tool. Productivity Pendulum does describe what it's all about, but it's a very long-winded and two very long words. So, all right, the productivity pendulum is exactly what it sounds like. Imagine one of those pendulums, right? We have those, we've all seen like on somebody's desk. There's the steel ball hanging from a string, and you pull it. The laws of physics, the length that you pull it to one side, and then when you release it, it will swing equal distance the opposite side, right? So that the movement of that pendulum going back and forth from one apex to the other apex creates a visual image, if you trace it out, like a semicircle. And so the visual tool, again, which is available in our show notes, is literally a semicircle. And imagine the semicircle with a steel ball hanging from the middle of that semicircle, where the horizontal line on the semicircle, or the flat line, is on the horizontal axis. And then you have this ball, and that's the pendulum swing. This creates a semicircle image. And so what this tool is doing is helping us understand what so many people struggle to figure out, which is what most people talk about as work-life balance, but we've reframed it as work-life integration. We don't want to pit these two opposites against each other. It's not an either or. Is it work or rest? Is it productivity, or is it, investing in ourselves? It's really a question of how do we do both and well? And so let me offer just a couple of quick analogies to help us understand what's at stake, right? So the first one is a kind of more technical one for some people connect with this easier. So right, we love our cars. Our cars are an incredibly effective tool. Why? Because they are a vehicle that carries us from point A to point B, and whatever kind of car you drive, it serves the basic purpose of getting us from one place to the next. And the car is as good to us as it serves that purpose. There is a clear purpose for that vehicle. Except that, like many people out there, I myself hate the effort that is required to maintain my cars. I hate when the check engine light comes on, or the gas light comes on, or the windshield wiper fluid light comes on, right? We have these indicators on the dashboard of our car to let us know that our car needs some form of maintenance. As a matter of fact, my car, now that everything's digital, will tell me when I need to go for an oil check or a full-blown maintenance. And I can tell you, I feel so deeply inconvenienced even to stop by the gas station to put gas in my car. Now, do I know those things are important? Yes. Why? Because what I also know is that if I don't maintain my car, eventually my car is not going to serve its purpose, right? And so here's what happens is that the light goes on and indicators start showing up. Hey, you need to pay attention to this. But here's the thing about our cars is that they'll keep going for a while. Like, we've all played that game of how long can I go before I actually stop to get gas? Like, at what point does my car stop moving forward, right?
Yeah.
We've all had that check engine light on for weeks or months, and we're playing like roulette with, our opportunity to drive the car by thinking that I can just keep going. Well, here's the interesting thing. As human beings, we talked about this in a previous episode, we are integrated creatures mentally, emotionally, and physically. Right? This is the vehicle that we are all driving around every single day as we go through every activity. And here's the thing, what we do, very similar to with the car, is that there are these indicators that start to flash at us, letting us know, hey, you're overly worked. Hey, you're tired. Hey, you're emotionally spent. You're cranky. You're grumpy. You're acting out. You're reactive. And you're not thinking well. You're making simple mistakes. These indicators that, hey, some form of maintenance needs to happen. But like our cars today, we are such resilient creatures that we just keep pushing forward, wondering how far can I keep going before this vehicle called me breaks down. And too often when we are working with leaders, what we discover is that most people, it's not until they find themselves broken down on the side of the road of life, broken marriages, broken relationships with their kids, significant health issues, have let go of hobbies and anything that's fun. There's so many indicators or consequences, I should say, of what people experience before they're willing to start paying attention to the required maintenance that we as human beings need so that we can be sustainably and effectively productive. So that's the first metaphor, car metaphor. The second one is that of a tree. When we moved into the house that we currently live here in San Diego, there was this really ugly brown barren tree in our front yard, right dab smack in the middle of the hill of our yard. And I remember saying to my wife, why are we moving into this house? Because she chose the house, right? That's kind of, I trust her on that. Why are we moving this house? This is the ugliest tree. It's barren. It looks like it's dead, right? It looked so dark on the bark. I thought, this has got to be a dead tree. Are we going to have it removed? What are we going to do with it? And my wife said, babe, don't you understand that that tree is in a season of resting, or what horticulturists would call abiding? It doesn't make any sense. What are we talking about? So long story short, what happened is a few months later, that tree started to actually grow leaves. And in a very short time, it became like this huge, robust, beautiful green tree. And then in due time, it started to produce fruit. It just so happened it was producing my favorite fruit of all time, which is a persimmons fruit, which if our listeners have not had a persimmons, there are two kinds. I'm talking about the crunchy kind. It tastes like a mixture of apple and orange and pear and I don't know, every other good fruit in the world, all mixed into one. The most amazing fruit. But then guess what happened? Eventually, that fruit, after we ate a bunch of it and the birds came and picked at it, the fruit all fell off. And then guess what? The leaves all fell off. And then it, again, for a season, looked like a dead, barren, useless tree. And that is a powerful picture for us as human beings to remember that we, like these trees, we are designed, we are hardwired to be fruitful, to be productive, to produce awesome things in our life, in our relationships, in our workplace, in our culture, in our communities. And yet we, like those trees, require seasons of abiding or resting where we slow down, right? Because we have bought into the lie that I think is prevalent in American culture, which is we can be productive at all times.
Yeah.
And the goal is to only increase productivity because slowing down means you're losing or you're failing, right? So these are the two metaphors just to kind of draw us into the reality that we don't want to wait until the consequences of breaking down are so great that they're unrecoverable. And secondly, we want to understand that just like every organic living thing, we have seasons of fruiting, but we also have to have seasons of resting or abiding. So imagine now this semicircle with the pendulum dropped in the middle. On the right side of this image, we have things like fruiting. We want to be fruitful people. We want to be productive. We want to do good work. We want high output. And I think that's absolutely appropriate because I think part of our design as human beings is to be productive, to work hard and to achieve great things. Awesome. But what we have to understand is that it's not a tension, but it's an integration with the left side of the semicircle, which is there for the desired output, there is a required input of rest and abiding and cultivating and investing in ourselves in such a way that it allows us to be increasingly more productive. And there's a rhythm. If you think of that pendulum swinging back and forth, there's got to be a rhythm. And we'll come back to discussing kind of the different kinds of rhythms we need to think about, but there's got to be a rhythm between our input and our output. And just like the laws of physics would suggest in that steel ball pendulum we talked about, the degree to which we invest on the input side is the degree to which we will experience output on the opposite side. So let me just pause here because that's a massive concept that I'm hoping for many of our listeners, they're moving beyond this concept that we've often lived with, which is I rest from my work. I crash from the weekends.
Yeah.
at a holiday, right? And how many people go on holiday and then they get sick for the first few days because they're finally resting and their body's like, that's it. We're checking out. We're done. We're not doing anything else, right? So versus a principle of life I want to recommend to our listeners, instead of resting from our work, what if we learned to work from rest?
Yeah.
And that's what our conversation today is about. So Don, I want to hear back from you. What's popping for you?
I mean, I think the fundamental difference is that, in fact, you can't be you can't have the output of productivity unless you have the input. And we often are so focused on our output that we forget that there's this whole side that things need to go into the system in order for there to be an output. My husband, Drew, is a mechanic, and right now he has his truck up on a lift because he recognized that in order for this truck to keep running, all of our vehicles are paid off and we love that. In order for this truck to keep running, he needed to invest, he needed to put some input into the system. So he's redoing the front end of this truck. He had to buy the products, he has to, the truck now is out of commission for a season while he does the work on this truck. But there's no understanding that, well, this truck is worthless now. This truck is just not pulling its weight around this family right now.
That's right. That's right.
It's that this is a required inconvenience in order for that truck to keep serving this family for the long haul.
Wow.
And as a mechanic, I would say he's also on the receiving end of people who make that mistake of looking at regular maintenance as a dramatic inconvenience to the point where, as optional. And so something that was a small, quick fix, now the whole system's blown. Now everything's a mess. Yeah. Because we didn't choose to pause and invest in those regular right in the regular maintenance. Now it's going to cost us so much time, so much money. And this is why I say that this tool is an important but critical shift in our understanding of how we operate in our lives.
That's right. In every area of our life. And we'll get into that. We'll talk about work, personal, marriage, family, whatever. Like every area of our life, this matters. I think it's interesting about what you're saying stirred this thought in my mind, that sometimes the pathway to greater productivity is actually less productivity. And that can be very difficult for some of us to wrestle with, because maybe we've grown up in a culture where it's like, hey, you burn the candle at both ends, you work. That's how you prove your value. That's how you become successful. Or the opposite, people who become so paralyzed by their fear of not knowing what to do and how to do it, that they get stuck on the opposite side of the pendulum. So let me just continue on with the tool, and let's unpack a couple of concepts. So first of all, we talked about the importance of maintenance or cultivation or this investment strategy as it relates to drawing us back to the left side of the semicircle so that we can invest into ourselves, so that we are more functional, more healthy, and have more to give to the environment around us, right? Because we have already talked about how if we just keep pushing on the right side, we keep pushing work, productivity, burn the candle at both ends, eventually it leads to burnout and breakdown. And I don't know anybody I've ever worked with who hasn't had multiple experiences in different areas of their life of burnout and breakdown. And again, so that we can hopefully in the future avoid the more catastrophic consequences of what happens when we break down, we need to pay attention to what does it mean for us to invest in ourselves, to maintain ourselves, to cultivate ourselves. And so on the left side of the semicircle, I want us to think of 4 key investments that we need to make. The first one is into our personhood. That's kind of a weird word. I love it because it's kind of a catch-all, which basically is, how do I invest into my sense of self, my sense of identity, my sense of self-worth, my sense of value in what I bring to the world around me, and into my sense of calling or mission or significance or purpose, right? So that's all under this banner of personhood. And very often we get so caught up in trying to achieve things externally that we fail to slow down and have a rhythm of investing in what's going on for us internally. Who are we? A great resource I'd love to encourage to our listeners is Simon Sinek's Start With Why, a great book that drives us with deep questions to wrestle with. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose here on earth? And who do I want to be when I show up to any environment? And that pushes people to consider the fact that our life matters. Our impact in this world matters. No matter how influential we think we are or are not, our life matters. Listener, your life matters. It ripples for generation after generation how we operate in our lifetime. And so really investing into our personhood. And again, we have so many other resources that can help people have greater ideas about how to invest in their personhood. But just for now, that's what we mean by personhood. The second thing is perspective. Very rarely do we slow down to reflect and to make sense of our life experiences, whether it was from the day that we've just experienced or the week before, the month before, the year before. I've talked a lot about the discipline, importance of journaling, which is an opportunity for us to reflect on what's going well in my life, what's not going well in my life. Am I investing in the things that matter to me, or am I getting distracted? Are the relationships in my life healthy, or are they not healthy? How am I doing physically? How am I doing emotionally? How am I doing spiritually for those people who engage in that area of their life? How am I doing financially? Right? If we don't reflect on how our life is going practically, we will very quickly lose perspective. Most importantly, our perspective is driven by our sense of personhood. So it starts with personhood. And then we need to continually develop a right-sized, sober perspective on our life and on how we're investing our life. The third key area that we need to invest into is our priorities. We need to make really sure that we are clear about our priorities, whether it's in our families, whether it's in our friendships, whether it's in our hobbies, whether it's in our workplace. We need to intentionalize our priorities every single day, every week, every month, every year, I would suggest. And so there's daily planners for this. That's a great tool. There's all kinds of tools online that we can look into and say, hey, how do I set clear priorities to make sure that I'm investing my time, energy, and resource in the direction that's going to give me the results that I'm looking for? Because again, remember, input determines output in our life. And then the fourth area, the fourth P, if people haven't picked up on it, they're all P words. The fourth P is play. And I think very often the older we get, the less permission we give ourselves to play. And play could look like a number of things. Anything that feels, any activity that feels recreative, that feels it recharges you, that allows you to laugh, to giggle, to let your hair down, to relax, to decompress. And I would suggest that we make sure we're not abusing any of those activities, because we can abuse, I can abuse golf as quickly as I could abuse alcohol. I can abuse, going on vacation as easily as I can abuse, watching Netflix shows. But we're really talking about activities that we engage with that bring us joy, refresh our spirit, our heart, our minds, our bodies. And obviously some of those are done in isolation. If we paint, if we make music, if we, write poetry, whatever those are, or whether those are activities that we do in community with others. Play is such an important part of how we maintain ourselves, recharge ourselves, how we cultivate the core elements in ourselves that leads to power. That's the fifth term. The byproduct of investing in our personhood, our perspective, our priorities, and our play is that's how we recharge the battery. That's how we put fuel back in the tank. That's how we make sure that we as a vehicle are able to operate optimally. And what that does is that power drives us back into the activities of work and productivity and engagement in whatever we're doing. That creates momentum. So drawing back to the left side of the semicircle is a maintenance issue. And what that does is it creates the energy and the power so that we can swing back with momentum, renewed momentum into the areas of our life that we want to be productive in.
Yeah. I think I just want to highlight for our listeners too that the 4 Ps are so important, because rest is not just the absence of work.
Ooh, that's good. Say that one again. That's really good.
Rest is not just the absence of work. And sometimes we think that, well, if I'm not at work, then I'm resting. But no, I want to challenge that assumption. If your rest is not helping you achieve these 4 Ps, then it's not the type of rest that is going to give you that momentum, going to give you that power so that you can return. If you are, for example, doom scrolling, if you are numbing out, if you are not at work, but you are engaged in, relationships that are draining outside of work, that's not actually what we're after here. That doesn't equate the rest that we are talking about that is desired and necessary for you to continue to operate optimally.
I love that. So let's finish the tool by talking about some really important points of application for this tool. And that's what we call intentional predictable patterns.
Yes.
Predictable patterns is the phrase I like to use. It's memorable for me, but these are no different than routines that we implement or integrate into our lives, rituals that we engage with, and we all have them. Think about it. Most human beings go to sleep at some point in the day, and then they wake up at some point in the day. They eat X number of meals each day. They might, drive to work at a certain time. Most days they talk to similar people each day. These are all routines or predictable patterns that we engage with the hope that they are serving a purpose.
Right.
Whether the purpose is work and productivity, or the purpose is rest and personal cultivation.
Mhm.
And so we want to be really thoughtful because again, remember, our lives really do live in the integration between our inputs and our outputs. And so we need to have inputs on what I say, a daily, weekly, and seasonal basis that are going to help us cultivate the lifestyle and what in business terms, the ROI that I'm looking for. So let me run through a few examples, and then Don, I want you to throw out some examples from your life. So in my younger years, like many other people, I was ambitious. I'm still ambitious, and hopefully in a good way now. But I was ambitious. I wanted to get ahead. I wanted to be successful. I wanted people to see me as being a standout. And so I oftentimes engaged in this cycle that we've talked about already of work really hard, burn out, and then crash, and then try to recover, and then rinse and repeat.
Right.
And I would do this in a lot of areas of my life. In my marriage, I would do this. I do this as a parent, trying to be a great dad and be involved in every activity ever conceived by a parent. And, to be involved with our friends and to be involved here and to go to work and to burn the candle at both ends and to work through the weekends and to travel as much as I possibly could. And all of it was this, I'm running after, like we said, I'm running after affirmation. I'm running after reputation. I'm running after things that aren't bad in and of themselves, unless running after them eventually leads to burnout and breakdown. And I went through multiple burnout and breakdowns early in my career. And then a mentor came along and said, "Hey, bro, you're going to be dead by the time you're 35. This is sustainable. You're going to lose your marriage. You're going to lose your family. You're going to lose your health. You really are." And I remember like, wow. And I was already experiencing, I was getting sick all the time. I was exhausted when I came home from work trips. I was half asleep through so many family activities. I go to work and I could just feel it. I was mailing it in at some point. And so I had to rethink, okay, like obviously working hard is a great thing, but I'm not working wisely. And that's what we're talking about. It's a shift from just working hard to working wisely, right? Don't work harder, work smarter. But working smarter sometimes is working hard. So we want to make sure that we understand that. So I started to ask the question together with my mentor, hey, what are the most important areas of your life where you want to see fruitfulness, where you want to see the desired ROI? And so I identified marriage, family, my physical health, which includes my emotional health, and my spiritual health. Let me add that in there. And then obviously I wanted to be really effective and productive at work. I said, great. So what we have to do is we have to design the inputs to match the outputs, and your inputs have to lead to sustainable results that can increase over time, rather than this is a marathon, not a sprint. And so we began to step back and ask the question, what are the rhythms I already have in my life? What are my daily rhythms? Well, I go to sleep and I wake up. I eat X number of meals. I go to the gym on these days. I hang out with my family on, with these rhythms. And he said, okay, well, let's be really intentional. Let's talk about your marriage. What is the intentional rhythm or pattern that you want to engage with your spouse on a regular basis, on a daily, weekly, seasonal basis that would potentially give you the ROI you're looking for, right? And that's the thing about predictable patterns or routines or rituals. Any one experience or expression of them doesn't feel life-changing, but it's actually over time that
Yeah.
they begin to make significant changes. And so we committed to a date night each week. We committed to Saturday morning coffees to kind of debrief the previous week and to pre-brief the coming week with all the activities and kids' schedule, my travel and her work. And we started to, this is going to blow our listeners' minds. So if this is offensive, just let it pass. It's not for you. This is just for the person that read it. We actually like scheduled our sex life, which so many people are like, that's crazy. Like you're ruining the romance. I'm like, dude, no. Romance was awesome in the beginning when we had our free schedules and it was just kind of,
Right.
fun and games. But now like we're building a life together. We're building something. So we need to be a little bit more intentional about our investment strategy. In the same way that we have to be intentional to process our weeks, we had to be intentional about how we were intimate with one another. And with my kids, some intentional rhythms. We ate breakfast in the morning and we went through a ritual of, a few questions like, hey, what's one hope and what's one thank you as you start your day? And what's one area that you want us to be aware that you're like going to go fight for today? And then we did this even when our kids were in school, like, oh, I've got a test, or hey, I want to play with my friend, or I want to, learn to ride a bike, whatever it was. We just said, hey, let's do that. Awesome. And then at night over dinner, we had a predictable pattern of together celebrating what was your high, what's your low, and then what's your buffalo, which somebody introduced us to. Your high is the high of the day, low is the low of the day. And it wasn't time for mom and dad to fix and counsel. It was just a time to hear each other and to be together and to learn about each other's days. And then what's your buffalo? What's the unexpected experience you had during your day today? And that was so much fun.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we did that with my marriage, did that with my kids. And of course, as the kids got older and seasons of life changed, we had to recalibrate our predictable patterns. We also started deciding, okay, we're going to go on vacations, not when we can get a chance, but we're going to start planning our vacations out ahead and make sure that there's a predictability to them in our yearly calendars. And there's so many more areas, but now transfer that into, working with my teams. Like even with our team at Empower Coaching, right? We have a Monday morning, almost 2-hour meeting where we're, debriefing what's gone on the week before, where we start with celebrations. What are you celebrating? Where'd you win? What are challenges? Talking about the week ahead. We're talking about big projects. But that's every week. It's on the calendar. So I often tell people, it's a predictable pattern when it's on your calendar.
That's right.
Our calendar is just like a budget for our time, right? If you're really serious about budgeting your finances, man, you make a budget, right? You put it on some document or piece of paper, digitally or whatever. Same thing with our time and energy and our resource. We've got to budget it intentionally, and then we can review how is this working for us and recalibrate when necessary. Even our clients, they almost fall out of their seat when I tell them, yeah, generally speaking, our coaching process is a weekly 1-hour call for the necessary parties, right, that we're working with. And they always freak out and go, we can't do 1 hour a week. This isn't going to work. And I say, hey, listen, give it 3 months. If after 3 months, this isn't working for you, no problem. We'll move on. And what do they always say, Don, after 3 months? We can't afford not to do this.
Yeah. You can imagine not doing this every week.
I can imagine that is every week. I said exactly, because that 1 hour each week isn't always going to feel powerful or like you're getting traction, but you put in, a number of weeks in a row. And after 2 or 3 months, you start to realize, man, we're moving the needle a whole lot more than we thought possible. As a matter of fact, what most companies or leaders tell us is they say, we spent so much money before you guys showed up and did not feel like we got much traction with those consultants or coaches. And that's because their mechanisms or strategies for coaches, I'll come in once a quarter for 2 days straight. Nothing changes in 2 days. Right?
Yep.
If we want lasting, sustainable change and transformation and momentum, then we've got to commit ourselves to predictable patterns. And the beautiful thing is we get to step back, assess any area of our life and say, where do I want a different ROI? And then all we do is reverse engineer and say, okay, well, what are the predictable patterns, the necessary inputs, short, small, on a regular daily, weekly, or seasonal basis that will over time yield dramatic results.
That's right. For myself, I find the weekly and seasonal rhythms are important, but it's the small daily rhythms, like you were saying, that are actually the most crucial in moving the needle. So I have on my calendar time to meditate, just to literally stop my body and let my mind relax every day. I walk on my treadmill every day. And when I don't, I feel the difference in my body, in, just how I show up, how I operate. Similarly, like you said, with our family, we have teenagers now and our schedules are busy, but every Monday and every Thursday, those are the days that we're home together. We have dinner together, we play a game after dinner. And you know what? Sometimes those teenagers are disgruntled about us forcing them to sit there and play a game together. We do it because, like you said, over time, those are the things that are going to yield the results that we want. And it's easy to throw those things away because they feel difficult or not convenient at the time. One thing I want to point out, if you are listening and you're like, okay, all of this sounds great, but I have a really hard time adding something to my schedule that sticks. There are things that you do every day that are non-negotiables. You wake up. I'm pretty sure you probably stumble to the kitchen and you get a cup of coffee. You walk out the door, you drive your car. Atomic Habits was game changer for me because it was like,
Yeah.
if you want to add something to your schedule, combine it with something that is an already non-negotiable. So when I wake up, that's when I meditate. I wake up every day. That's a non-negotiable. Like, knock on wood, so far it's been pretty non-negotiable. So that's when I meditate. Same thing about, like, I have a habit that I stack when I drink my coffee. So what are the things that you're already doing? And if you're
Mm,
looking to provide or to add another daily rhythm to your schedule, add it to something you're already doing.
yes, I love that. Stacking, what did you say? Stacking habits?
Yeah.
Habit stacking. Atomic Habits is who's that? That's Adam Grant.
Yes.
Yes. Great book. Great resource, by the way. If you're looking to have a different lens and understanding predictable patterns and the value that they can have in transforming our lives in many ways. Love it. Okay, real quick, a couple of quick practical things that we can go from this podcast episode and go do even right now while you're driving on the treadmill, whatever you're doing. That will be a lot of fun, right? To have our listeners share with us through the comment section or DM us and let us know,
Yeah.
where do you listen to our podcast? My wife listens to podcasts when she's in her sauna. And I was
Yeah.
like, I don't even know how that's possible. It's so hot in there, but whatever. Like, we'd love to hear. Are you surfing? Are you in an airplane? Are you at the gym? Are you driving? Are you playing golf listening to this podcast? Like, if you're doing that, I'll tip my hat to you. That's amazing. We'd love to hear that. So a couple of practical things. Number one, take some time to reflect on the areas of your life where you feel like you have a great ROI. Maybe your marriage is in a great season. Maybe your relationship with a significant other is in a great season. Maybe you feel like your physical health, you're in a great season. Well, let's celebrate that.
Yeah.
Then, hey, in that area, I feel sustainably productive. I feel like there's a great output. But then also take some time to identify, where am I not getting the ROI that I want in my life? Where do I feel like things might be burning out a little bit, slowing down, breaking down? And to ask then the next question, which is there a simple, predictable pattern that I could experiment with over the next month and a half to 2 months that I think could potentially move the needle in that area and give me a greater ROI? And then the beautiful thing is we get to review at that point and recalibrate to ensure, and this is, I mean, this, we spent our whole lives constantly reviewing, recalibrating our predictable patterns, whether it's in our personal lives, whether it's in our work environment, to ensure a greater ROI and a greater level of output.
That's right. And one question I would challenge people to as well, and this is kind of an advanced application, but what story are you telling yourself about rest? What story have you been telling about rest? And is it helping? Is it hurting? Do you need to maybe recalibrate that story? So next episode, we are talking about the 5 capitals, which is how we kind of touched on this. We started talking about it a little bit, but how do we lead with our eye on an actual return on our investments that's bigger than just profit. A lot of times we are very focused on our bottom lines, but we would challenge that there's a lot of areas in our life that maybe we need to be focusing on the bottom line, and we've been neglecting those areas. So that's what we're looking at in our next episode. If this episode made you pause and think deeply about this idea of rest and work and the integration of the two, I want you to send it to somebody that you think could benefit from this. We all know people in our life that are burning that candle at both ends. This episode might be for them. So go ahead and send that off. And don't forget, as always, we have a free gift for you in the show notes. 5 shifts to become the leader that you wish you had. And remember this week, great leadership isn't frantic, it's focused. And you can learn to lead with rhythm and not reaction.